We'd like to welcome to the September 18th Utah Wildlife Board meeting. This meeting's being held in person here at the Eccles Wildlife Education Center in Farmington, Utah. And prior to moving on with other business, we're going to turn the time over to Kent Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had a little bit of discussion behind the scenes, and we felt like it would be appropriate at this time that in light of recent events and the tragedy that took place right here in our own backyard last week and all of the people that are adversely affected, we thought it would be appropriate that we observe a moment of silence. So if we could do that for right now.
Thank you. This meeting is also being streamed live on YouTube. It's a public forum that allows you to express your opinions and proposals on wildlife management in our state. This board considers the ideas, options, opinions, and feedback before making decisions and proposals before us today. The Wildlife Board is charged with setting wildlife policy for our state. We all have ideas and opinions about what's best for Utah's wildlife. It's why we're here today. We encourage those who want to express their opinion to fill out a comment card. It can be found there in the back of the room. Comments on today's meeting should be focused on topics listed on the agenda. Unrelated comments will not be heard today and should be sent directly to the DWR or board members for consideration at another time. We expect those in attendance to respect the people who speak, especially those who hold views that don't align with our own. Are their own. Respectful behavior facilitates efficient meetings where board members can listen, digest, address concerns, ideas, and proposals being presented. Disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. Those engaged in it will be asked to leave. Lastly, please, to reduce distractions during the meeting today, put your phone on silent. And if you need to take a call, please step outside. We'll begin with an introduction of the board members. We'll start down here with Ryan. Work our way this way.
Brian Fouts, representing the Northern Region. Bob Christensen, representing Northeast Region.
Paula Richmond, representing Southern Region.
Kent Johnson, representing the Southeast Region.
Justin Oliver, representing the Northern Region.
Chris Robinson, Central Region.
Thank you. And I'm Gary Nielsen. I represent the Central Region, also acting as board chair at this time. Would actually like now to introduce the rack chairs.
Brad Buchanan, Northern Region.
Brock McMillan, Central Region.
Scoot, you're up.
Scoot Flattery, Southeast Region.
Okay. And you'll be filling in for Austin.
Yes, Kevin Bunnell. I received a text from Austin about 5 minutes ago that he's chasing an elk and isn't going to make it. So if there was ever a good excuse to miss, he's got a good one this morning.
Thank you. Have we heard anything from Eric? Oh. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, this is Nathan Crapel from the Northeast Region. I'll be filling in for Eric today.
Okay, thank you. All right. You had a chance to look over the minutes from the last meeting and the agenda for this meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve both the minutes and the agenda.
So moved.
It's been motion by Kent Johnson.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Justin Oliver. All in favor, raise your hand, but also say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll now turn the time to Paula, our vice chair, for the action log and old business report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a couple items. They're some of the same ones from last meeting, but a few of them should start clearing out. Destination water bodies list. That one's due this fall. Spearfishing, to look at the possibilities of increased opportunities for spearfishing. and the impacts that they may have on the fisheries in Utah. Also use of aerial equipment. Look into that for hunting and retrieval of game. Dax Mangus is on that one, and I know he's working on that. Today, I believe that we should be able to remove the sheep hunts due to disease outbreak to open opportunity for hunters and just that they're able to contact and notify hunters when a hunt is available for a lone sheep or a sheep disease outbreak. And private land vouchers and point loss waiting periods. Lindy Varney has that one. She's going to be looking into private land vouchers in the relation to losing points and incurring waiting periods, and to be brought forward as an informational item. And that's all we have for now. Thank you.
Destination water bodies and spearfishing is ready to present.
Fantastic. We have a presentation ready. I think that sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay, good morning all. My name is Trina Hedrick. I'm the Cold Water Sport Fish Coordinator. And if I have done this correctly, should be able to do this without any difficulty. Let's see. I had much help figuring this out too, so it wasn't just me. Okay, there's that. I just need to go back in. Okay. Just going to go forward real quick and then back just to, yep, okay, we're good. Okay. Good morning, all. As you know, we were asked to create this list of destination waters back 2 years ago in September 2023. The idea being that the waters included in the list would go to all the RACs and you, the board, as informational items when the division revised their management plans for these waters. Changes to all other water body management plans would go only to the local RACs. So to decide on the list, we looked at the list of last waters visited, created from both the Statewide Angler Survey, the Blue Ribbon Economic Survey, and each of these lists, which the waters did vary a little bit, but all waters were Blue Ribbon waters. So we decided to select the top 10 waters from the most recent survey, which was the Blue Ribbon Economic Survey. So these are the most economically important waters in Utah, including providing much needed economic benefit for rural Utah, which is one of the original drivers for the Blue Ribbon program. These are considered the best of the best and provide the best fishing, fish habitat, and the best fishing access to Utahns. Those are the three main tenets required for a fishery. So the top 10 destination water plan, like I said, from the Blue Ribbon Economic Survey were Strawberry Reservoir, Deer Creek Reservoir, Flaming Gorge, Jordanelle, the Green River, Provo River, Fish Lake, Willard Bay, East Canyon Reservoir, and Bear Lake. And again, the revisions to these management plans would be presented as informational items to all of the RACs, to you, the board, and then everything else would just go to local RACs only. And that was what we had. Any questions?
Just to clarify, Lake Powell was not on there?
Correct. So Lake Powell fell from number 6, which would have made the top 10 in it was a 2013 study where they asked people in 2011. It fell down to number 22 on this list, and we had to cut it off somewhere. We're not opposed to adding back in. Obviously, a lot of people still fish Lake Powell. We feel like it's probably water level fluctuation, presence of drifted mussels, that sort of thing. So it very well could come back higher depending on, you know, the future of Lake Powell, right, in the next survey. So we also thought about potentially every time we do a Blue Ribbon Economic Survey, which is typically every 5 years, we could then change the list and bring that list to you all for that revision. So there's lots of options, but yeah, Lake Powell did not make the top 10 this time.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Trina,
Yes.
when in the original action item list, when we were talking about it, a lot of people, because of some of the popularity of some of the big water bodies, like the ones on that top 10 list, then when they made decisions about them, they wanted, all of the RACs wanted the opportunity to speak to it, as opposed to just hear about it, where before, like if it was Flaming Gorge, then only the Northeastern RAC heard it and stuff like that. Is that the intent of what's going on now then?
Yes, so my understanding was that the waters on this list, when we revise the management plan, typically they would go through a management team process. So RAC members would be invited, local RAC members would be invited to sit on those as well. But these waters would go to all of the RACs and to you, the board. And my understanding was that was for an informational item. So they would have chance to ask questions, provide comment, but it would not be an action item, is my understanding.
Right, but they'd be able to talk about it, and that was,
Yes.
because before they didn't even hear it, because it wasn't on their list for that particular RAC, so.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, our first three agenda items today are informational. We'll now hear from Director Riley Peck for the agency update. Okay, no, that's fine. Go ahead, Craig.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Like Trina, I'm always a little trepidatious whenever I engage with technology, so hopefully this works. Last year, we presented to the board a series of spearfishing modifications to the regulations for spearfishing statewide. In response to that, we got some comments regarding the potential concerns related to the potential impact of harvest from spearfishing. As an action item that came out of that discussion, we were tasked with coming up with a way to assess harvest impacts from spearfishing through some sort of voluntary reporting process. So what we've done, Trina and myself, over the past 6 months, we've been working with a subset of the spearfishing community to develop an app, I guess is what you want to call it, that allows for them to go out on each of their trips and report what they have seen, what they have harvested, and get that back to us. Those data will be available for presentation next year. And our hope is that they will point to the fact that harvest is not impactful and is actually achieving some of the desired harvest that we're looking for on some of these waters. So what I wanted to do for you today was just showcase the tool that we are working with, what I'll term the Spearos at this point in time. We are wrapping up beta testing of what you're going to see here today at the end of this month. We'll be incorporating their comments as far as workflow and elements of the app that they would like to see modified. And then we'll be rolling this out October 1 and having that ready for them to use. So as you see here, let me, again, gonna get in trouble with technology. So go there. Come on. Okay. Okay. As you see there, you start off with a home page, a landing page. That page allows you to put in information. This account information is yours only. It is not shared with any other anglers, any other Spearos out there. It is shared with the Division of Wildlife Resources. So we get to tap into everybody's information to analyze those data. When you go through that process, you're going to be able to say, yes, I was spearfishing today. You'll also be able to assess whether or not you saw anything, because not everything you see is something you're going to shoot as a spearfishing participant. So we're interested also in what they're seeing in areas where we have habitat installations in our reservoirs. We'd like to actually gauge use. What better way to do that other than forward-facing sonar via being under the water and having these people be able to give us a report on that. If they are seeing things, oftentimes they want to shoot them after they've entered the information related to the estimated number of fish they've seen. We ask them, did they actually harvest anything? They can identify multiple species that they harvested during that day. They can assess how many fish they harvested, enter that into the app, and the app is dynamic. So based upon that, we start to get an assessment of the length of the fish that they harvested. One of the concerns is that what they're harvesting is actually the top tier predators that are out there, and they are harvesting the biggest fish, trophy fish out there, taking those opportunities away from other anglers. We want them to log the 4 largest fish that they harvested by species that they harvested to give us an assessment of whether or not that is actually the case. Once they've done all that, they can go in and rate their satisfaction with the overall experience on the water and then enter their survey. So that's the draft tool that we have them reviewing right now. That's going to give us the ability to come back next year to you and present you with all of the data related to the impact of harvest by Spearos. Thank you.
So that'll just automatically upload to the division when they get into service,
Yes.
like the other ones. All right,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you, Craig.
And it goes into a geospatial database. We'll be able to see where everything is happening in the state, water by water, or roll it up to the statewide impact.
I think that'll be good info to have. Any other questions from the board for Craig? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now have Director Pick give us our DWR update.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few quick items that we'd like to talk about. We're kind of excited about some of these items and some pretty good news. I want to start off, we brought before this board some recommendations regarding the Monroe fire. And this last week, we received some really good news. As of Monday, September 15th, it sounds like most of the unit and the mountain on the Monroe are impacted by the Monroe fire has been opened up. And so those hunters that decided to retain their permits and try to hunt that will have more access earlier on than we originally thought might be the case. And so that is really good news. We just want to, again, send out our gratitude to those that worked so hard on that fire, those that are trying to work to make sure that the habitat is restored and individuals down there that were impacted. So really good news on that. There are a couple small caveats that'll still be closed, a picnic area and an area along the main canyon, but for the most part, we should be able to access the Monroe unit. Some of you might be aware that our state fair just wrapped up recently, and traditionally annually the Division of Wildlife has that building there that we welcome fair attendees come and look at different exhibits that we have and different opportunities for them. It was, in my opinion, another successful year. We had just shy of 30,000 individuals walk through our building there at the state fair. We love that opportunity to engage in the public. Oftentimes we are hosting individuals that we don't get to see in any other time. They usually are not, seen at our racks or our boards or some of our other open houses. So it's a great time to engage with the public. Almost 30,000 that walked through that was another significant year. So we feel pretty grateful that that was a success, and again, appreciate those that worked so hard to make that building a success and interact with our public. We did receive an update on our statewide adult doe survival recently, and as is the case in many years, it looks like we have a tale of two halves of the state. Adult doe survival in the northern portion of our state seem to be doing really well, and grateful for that. There is not the same happy, good feelings about our survival in the southern portion of the state. And it seems like in some of those units, our adult doe survival is fairly low. And so we'll need to keep an eye on that and do what we can moving forward to mitigate that and work to support and build our populations where feasible. And then lastly, We're going to be talking a little bit about our Expo permits later on in the agenda. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that the application period to host the Expo is over in that process. We've gone through that, and there is an intent to award Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife with partnership with the Mule Deer Foundation, that Expo contract. That would start in year 2027. 2026 is the last year of the current contract. It would start again in 2027 for 5 years with the ability to renew for another 5 years. Yeah. And that option is between both the division and the Expo contract holder, the division, SFW, and the Mule Deer Foundation. And so grateful to all of our partners that help us run that Expo. That is something we are very proud of in the state of Utah. It is something that really does a lot of good for the wildlife and brings a lot of attention here. And it's not an easy thing to take on. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of attention. And so I'm grateful for Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife and the Mule Deer Foundation for stepping up and partnering with us in that regard. It really is a bright spot for the state of Utah and for wildlife. And so grateful that that process is almost complete and excited about that. And Mr. Chair, outside of the weather is turning and it's great to be outside and everybody go find something to do and entertain yourself with wildlife, I believe that is the end of my division update.
Thank you, Director Peck. Yes, fall is on our doorstep.
Mr. Chair, could I
Yes.
ask just one question to
Yeah.
the director? The renewed contract, is it more or less the same as the prior with SFW and Mule Deer? Because
Yeah.
haven't they been doing it in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
All right, thank you, Director Peck. Our next item is the statewide angler survey and the results of it, and that'll be Craig Walker. Also, we're at 6. Okay. All right. All right, it'll actually be the Blue Ribbon Economic Survey results. That'll be Trina.
I better step in. I think I'm confusing you and I apologize. So, Craig, I believe you're still up. So we'll get you to do that dance. I was mistaken. And so I better, when Trina got up, I was confused on whether or not she presented her informational item or if that was an update. And so, Gary, I appreciate, Mr. Chair, I appreciate you being patient with me in my communication as I did a very good job at sufficiently confusing everybody.
Well, success was had by all. Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you for getting my extra steps in. Mr. Chair, board members, appreciate the opportunity today to kind of give you a preamble to hopefully what you were able to view online, and then I'll field any questions after that. I want to just recap some highlights from that presentation. The study was undertaken in partnership with Utah State University and their Institute of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism, and coordinated by Drs. Jordan Smith and Chase Lamborn. I wanted to give them kudos. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to assess what's going on with our anglers in the state. They're the foremost experts on being able to tap into social data. Findings from the survey showcase the fact that Utah maintains a very diverse fishing community with a wide array of interest groups targeting particular species, particular settings, and using a wide variety of gears. One underlying commonality, however, is that all anglers, regardless of how they are interacting with our fisheries, are seeking predominantly solitude and escape when they go fishing. And that's an important point that came out of this study. Another major finding is that anglers who consistently participate in fishing are those anglers who were exposed to fishing at a young age by a mentor or a parent. They end up becoming our core group of anglers, and they are the ones that are also passing the torch onto the next generation and acting as those mentors, setting the stage for what we have enjoyed in Utah, which is unusual in the nation right now, which is pretty stable angling participation in the state, fishing participation in the state. We've got an average participation rate that's been stable around 12% per capita over the past 10 years. Based on the findings from this survey, the division will be adjusting our management of fishing opportunities in the coming years. We're going to be catering to the needs of those subgroups that I mentioned in our fishing community. We're going to be conducting targeted marketing efforts to message specifically to those groups. We're going to be managing water bodies to provide a diverse array of fishing experiences. That's another thing that came out of here, is that people want a diverse array of angling opportunities. They're not hyper-focused. They like fishing at places where they have an opportunity to tack into multiple species. We're going to be working to disperse pressure and minimize crowding and make sure that people are getting that sense of solitude when they're out in the landscape. And we're going to be focusing on maintaining and improving the creation of opportunities in areas, new areas, where, again, people can be afforded that sense of escape. And finally, we're going to be hyper-focused on our core group of anglers, because we recognize the fact that that investment has a return with regard to maintaining that per capita participation. So that's kind of a lead into what generally was described in a fairly long presentation. Hopefully you all had a chance to view it in its entirety, and I'll take any questions at this time.
Any questions from the board? Questions from the rack chairs?
I just have a comment, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to commend the division on the effort in this regard. I think fishing has come a long way from what it was when I was a boy. I would go and you eagerly awaited April because you could finally go fishing, and you had to quit after the deer hunt. I think it's wonderful. The variety and the amount of fishing opportunity we have has just grown and grown, and I commend the division on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to see Utah actually start becoming a destination for people nationally to come fishing.
Yeah, just one comment too. I echo Kent. I just commend the division and, for the fisheries that we have. Raising my kids, we did a lot of fishing, and there's a lot of fish to be had, good fishing, some large fish my kids have caught over the years, and the solitude too. We really enjoyed the solitude. There's places to go for solitude, and wanted to get out and hike a little bit. And it's been a good experience for my kids and for my nephews and nieces. And anyway, they've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I might have a comment as well. I recently urban fishery, or a pond, was just opened up in West Haven, where I'm from, and it has been a pleasure to watch kids on their bikes with their fishing poles and things that I haven't seen for some time. And it is really good to see in the communities the amount of effort put out so that people can enjoy fishing. I have some of my greatest memories are with my grandfather out fishing when I was young, and so it's been really good to see the excitement and to see it starting to take place in the communities in some of these fisheries. So I commend for that as well.
Probably one of the only fossils in the room, but I remember when you had opening of fishing season, and it went right with Memorial Day and the end of school, and that was a sweet time of year as a kid. And then after that, it was pretty slow everywhere in the state the whole rest of the year. Less like you had some insider knowledge at Fish Lake, and that's all changed. If you want to go fishing and have good fishing at this point, you can go many places and have good fishing any time of year, whether it's through the ice, whether it's in the fall, whether it's in the spring. And so it's been a dramatic change. And I when I looked at the numbers a few years ago, I was shocked at just how many people came to Utah just to fish. And so that's an incredible job. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Now, Trina.
Thanks, Craig. All right, we won't actually be having any presentations at this time just because we were asked to view them online. So we'll have Trina come up and briefly summarize the agenda item she's in charge of today.
Yeah, so hopefully y'all had a chance to review the Blue Ribbon Economic Survey results. The results of that study really highlight the importance of fishing in Utah, not just for our constituents who love fishing and it's an important part of their life, but also to the state's overall economy. These results really drive home the importance of maintaining, we typically have a 12% per capita participation rate. So it's essential to maintain that into the future, but then also remain sensitive to the motivations of our anglers, right? Trying to seek solitude, get away from the daily grind, along with a lot of other things that Craig did a great job of touching on. So it's going to be a difficult challenge. He's kind of set the stage for what we've been trying to do, what we will be working on in the future. Just trying to provide these opportunities across the landscape without funneling everyone to the same water bodies, right? We need to be aware of that and just provide those opportunities across the landscape, get people out enjoying the whole state and all of the opportunities that we provide. So you said we've already started kind of wrapping our brains around how do we do that? How do we message to the public? And with the tools like this, like the statewide angler survey, the Blue Ribbon Economic Survey, they set us up to really fully be able to understand angler preferences, how those are changing, and then also to understand how we're doing. How are people responding to our changes? Are they liking them? And just giving us the ability to make adjustments on the fly as needed. So, and I guess, yeah, the ultimate goal that we have is providing more opportunities, good opportunities, trying to improve things on the ground, but also just maintaining the significant economic contribution that we see here, right? It's becoming more and more important to the state, and we need to be aware of that. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Trina. Any questions from the board?
I guess I have my mind turning from, I guess, the list of top water bodies, which is awesome. It's great. Thank you for that. I just wonder, like, a lot of them are up north. Is that based on population? Like, was population taken into account on these top fisheries?
No, that could be a factor. It was basically asking individuals what was their last water fish from a list of blue ribbon fisheries. So more people might fish, say, East Canyon Reservoir, and that maybe is why that made the top 10. It has changed though, right? We have seen Deer Creek and Jordanelle move up the list. Flaming Gorge and Green River are still on the list, but I think it was Green River that kind of moved down a little bit. So we do see fluctuations for sure. But yeah, no, it definitely could account for some of that, just population and just the sheer number.
Okay, I'm not gonna Southern Utah is great. There's a lot of fisheries, but it's okay if everybody doesn't come down. We're good.
Channeling Mike Hadley there. So there are a lot of Southern region waters that, made the top 20, right? So you just go down a little bit further and there's a lot that made that list. So.
Yeah. Any questions from the rack chairs?
Trina, when you done this, did you parse out whether it was non-resident or residents? I mean, are people bringing in from out of state, or is it all just in state, or did you even look at that?
It is in state and out of state. We didn't parse that out. The only thing that we asked Dr. Kim to look at was the use of guides out of state versus in state. That was a question that the Blue Ribbon Council was curious about. So we asked him after the fact. I can follow up with him about anything you might be curious about. But as you might guess, yeah, out of state anglers do use guides more, but that was the only thing that we followed up with him about.
Anything else? Thank you, Trina.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now start on the action items. If you'd like to make a comment on an action item, please fill out the comment cards and then give it back to one of the division personnel, and they'll make sure we get it up here. Comments need to be related directly to one or more items on today's agenda, and you have 3 minutes when you're at the mic. Okay, our first action item is a Southeast Region Big Game Management Plans, and we'll have Dustin Mitchell present that. I'll just ask you if you've got anything you want to add to your presentation that's different than you gave through the RAC process, or possibly give us a quick summary.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a brief summary. So every 5 years, we rotate doing our unit deer plans through each region to review them and update them with the range trend studies that have been done the year before, and then also to make them consistent with the statewide deer plan. If there's a change in the objective or a boundary change, then we bring them through the public process. And we've got 3 changes in our region that we're proposing, and so that's why we're bringing it here.
All right. Do you want to highlight those changes?
So yeah, on the LaSalle Mountains, we're looking at increasing the objective from 8,000 to 11,500. On the Manti, from 28,000 to 38,000. And on the San Juan Abajo Mountains, from 13,500 to 17,000.
All right, and those are basically based on more accurate methods that we're using now, right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yes. It's my understanding, and what I seen was a lot of confusion, it seemed like, in the racks. But it's my understanding, and correct me and if I'm wrong, but the increase in the population objective is based on the fact that with your new model, the deer are already there, and we're just going in compliance with statute. Is that correct? And would you elaborate?
Yeah, correct. So we're using the same model that we've used for a decade or so. The inputs that we put in to the model now are different. We're using our data that we're collecting from the deer captures and GPS collars that we're getting. So it's more realistic data for those units specifically. And so we plug those in, and with those adjustments on some units, these ones in particular, it raised our population estimate above our objectives. And so we needed to adjust our objectives to meet that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
My comment was or question was kind of similar, that these are big changes, 28 to 38, or, percentage wise, they're pretty meaningful, but to the extent the populations aren't already there, what steps do you take to move the actual populations to the targets?
To those targets, yeah. And I will say, Mother Nature is our biggest helper, precipitation.
But does it have a
drive it.
bearing on harvest? I mean, let's say that you have an objective here, the current population is here, then do you curtail harvest in some way to manage that population to get it to the objective?
Not really. We wouldn't change our harvest strategies to get there so much. If I'm getting your question right,
the question maybe is, what tools do you have to manipulate the population?
To bump it up?
Yeah. Or to bump it
so
down.
we're trying
harvest, you could obviously increase harvest and take it down, but to move it up.
Yeah, so a few different things within these plans to try to mitigate that, like vehicle collision or dealing with some disease issues also. So different ways to mitigate those pressures is how we'd increase. And sorry, Ken, back to your question also. Yeah, our numbers would be the same pretty much as what we've got right now. We're just increasing that because of those adjustments, that objective. But it's not like we grew 3,500 deer in a year. We've got the same number of deer per se.
I think it's kind of interesting that by rule, we have to manage at or below objective. So the objective always has to be ahead of where we're at. Otherwise, we're going to have to reduce populations to meet the objective. So think this was a good move. I like it. Questions from the rack? Chairs? Do we have any comment cards or questions? Well, comment cards from the public. Okay, Director Peck, will you summarize public comments, please?
Yeah, it's really easy to summarize on this one. We didn't have any online comments.
All right. I'll have the rack chairs summarize the motions from the racks.
You want to start on my end?
Yes, sorry.
In the southern region, there was a motion made to pass as presented and it passed unanimously.
Okay.
Same in the central. Northern region had one motion to approve as presented that passed unanimously.
Nathan?
Yeah, Northeastern, accepted as presented and passed unanimously.
Okay. Scoot?
Same thing in the Southeastern region.
Okay. All right. So board, do you need any further clarification or anything before we discuss this and move it towards a motion? All
I
right.
just want to comment, it is kind of exciting to see the work and data in action. So for me, that's the exciting part, is unit wide, unit specific, I should say, we're able to manipulate based on the data that they're getting because of the work they're putting in. It's pretty incredible.
I actually agree with that. On all the data we have on deer management these days, we're now prepared to do a better job than we've ever been able to do before. And that's a really good thing. So I agree with, I like these changes. I think they're good.
Chair Nelson, can I make, we had one more motion and it wasn't really associated with this, but it was, and that was our RAC wanted to request that the wildlife board make an action item to have the division come and explain the population model to us so that we could understand where these estimates came from. And that passed unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Brock. I actually spoke with Dax about that, about some of our options for making that available not only to the central region, but to anybody that wanted to look at it. And I know we're exploring possibilities of just putting a sample model online, say, okay, area X, and putting the details in and show them how they manage it. And then they can extrapolate that towards any unit they want to check it on. And the thing that's pretty neat with all the data that's out there from the division now is you can actually plug it in and see what's going to happen. And so that was kind of where that one was sitting at this point, but so noted. Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before I make my motion and just ask a question of you, do we need to worry about trying to make an action log item with that? Or, I mean, you've already spoken with division and they're committed to doing it. Is that good enough? Or?
Did I say things right, Dax? Is those the things we talked about? Would you please speak to it?
Yeah, we're happy to either present it at a board work session or put something together, take it to the racks, whatever you'd like. We're happy to accommodate that request, however you'd like us to.
Okay, then yes, Kent, go ahead.
Okay, so I think that commitment from the division is probably good enough for me. With that, I'd make a motion that we accept the Southeast region big game management plans as presented.
Got a motion by Kent,
Second.
second by Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Now we'll go to the mid-year plan or mid-plan review for the mountain goat, bighorn sheep, and Rusty Robinson, our once-in-a-lifetime species coordinator, will present that. And Rusty, if you have anything to add based on what happened during the RAC meetings, or possibly give us just a quick summary of the proposal.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Thank you. It was overall a good RAC tour. Some of the recurring themes with regards to the bighorn and mountain goat plans were that they're overall just well-written plans. A lot of forward thinking went into those. And the bighorn plan especially was instrumental in building some positive working relationships with the agricultural community. Because of that plan and some specific statements that are in that plan, the DWR is able to more easily support the domestic sheep industry and certain things. And it goes both ways. We've got really good friends and partners in the wool growers and others who defend and support us in our transplant efforts, in our habitat improvement, and our predator control, and in the event of a potential disease risk. And so it does go both ways. It's not that, we hear sometimes that the division just caters to ag, and of course they're happy, and that's not what it is. This is a real working partnership, and it's been great, and it's been a whole paradigm shift over the last few years. So we appreciate them and their involvement. We've observed in other states where those relationships get damaged and bighorn management just comes to a screeching halt. And so and by we, I mean the division and the ag community, we strive to maintain those relationships and those working partnerships. There were some concerns in the southern region about potential spatial conflict with adding the boulder to the transplant list. But I'm happy to answer any questions about that or any others you might have.
Brian.
Yeah, Rusty, maybe you can help me understand or help us understand that conflict on the boulder. I mean, I don't recognize that as being any different than some of the other units that we may have a similar proximity to domestics and some conflict there. Could you kind of give us some examples of that?
I think, all the real slam dunk spots are taken. There's not a lot of places left that they don't have some degree of risk involved. And most of the risk in that area would be kind of backyard flocks in towns or in Boulder and Escalante, things like that. There is a domestic allotment that's 18, 20 miles away to the north. Bighorn would have to go up and over the mountain through a lot of timber, which they could do. We've seen them do crazy things. But the statement that we tried to make in that meeting was that we take on all the risk. And by taking on all the risk, we mean that, the plan says we're not going to support any changes in grazing practices because of bighorn sheep. And we would go, if there was any spatial conflict where a bighorn wandered onto that allotment, we would go remove that bighorn. So by taking on the risk, we're going to lose our animals. You're not going to lose yours, or at least we're not going to support anything like that. So I think that was some of the concern. There was also a concern brought up that bighorns may potentially spread disease to domestic sheep, which is, we typically don't think like that. I think there's one study that stands out that I think 90% of all domestic sheep operations have Mycoplasma pneumoniae already in them, especially if they're a big operation. And so spreading disease that way is not something that I guess even registered in my brain. So anyway, that was a concern that was brought up. I'm not sure I agree with that concern. We typically think of it the other direction. So, but yeah, did that answer your question? Thanks.
And my understanding with putting Boulder on the list, it's just like a potential possibility. It's not a for sure thing. And I know, Kevin, do you mind just like addressing that a little bit? What would go into place before anything would be done?
Yeah, thanks, Paula. And Teresa's online and can add anything to this if she needs to. I think we became aware we've got some work to do with some of the local producers down in that part of the state through this process. And I guess I would commit that we would do that work if the boulder remained on the site for potential transplants. As Rusty has outlined, our philosophy is to not expand sheep populations at the expense of the domestic sheep industry. We would follow that philosophy at the local level, get a good group together and come up with a plan that everybody could agree with. If the board decided to leave the boulder on the list, we would commit to do that before, any translocations took place. And if in the end we couldn't come up with a plan that everybody was satisfied with, then we maybe have to have a different conversation. But we'd like the opportunity to see if we can come up with a plan that everybody would be comfortable with.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the rack chairs? Okay, we'll invite Director Peck to summarize our online comments.
Yeah, we did have one online comment. The individual commented that they were in strong support or strongly agreed with the division's recommendation. With the comment also that our plans are logical, but don't provide a lot of detail on how the division involves hunters in that. And so that is feedback that we can take into consideration, but strongly agreed.
Thank you. We also have 2 comment cards up. We'll first have Stephen Nelson come to the mic. Oh, yes. Yes, Sierra.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Sierra Nelson, and I represent the Utah Wool Growers Association. And I really appreciate your time and my opportunity to comment on this, and Steve's opportunity. I feel like last year I was a bombshell, and this year I'm a dude. So, I feel like it go either way, right? I had the opportunity to not only sit on the original committee that made the Bighorn Plan, but participate in the mid-year review. And I really appreciate the division. I appreciate SFW. I appreciate Wild Sheep Foundation. All of our partners that participated in this process. I don't think that we thank them enough, and you enough, for all that you do. Bighorns are scary to domestic sheep. Still. Hell's Canyon was rough, but we have developed such a relationship and such a trust that we want to fully support the plan as written, and we want to express our support for the division and how much we appreciate that partnership and where we have grown to, knowing that there are people that we can go to who will listen to us, who will help us, who can help us navigate the process. It's a two-way street. There has to be win-wins. We have to work on it together. But having the division say that they assume the risk and we're going to work it out, we have faith in that. We trust that. We appreciate that. And we know that there is a strong path forward as long as we all stand together. So I want to say my thanks to Rusty. He has to put up with us and take all my crazy phone calls and just support the plan. And I'd appreciate if the board could push the plan forward and support it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sierra. We'll now hear from Troy Justensen. He'll be followed by Wade Garrett.
Well said, Steve. You're still my blonde bombshell, so I'm going to keep you at that. So, Troy Justensen, Sportsman, Fish and Wildlife. Speaking on behalf of Sportsman, Fish and Wildlife, and also as a member of the Sheep Committee, we support the division's recommendation. Sierra brought out some important parts. That we've talked a lot about how that Sheep Committee was a turning point for a lot of our different committees, and the trust, the friendship that's been built moving forward. And we appreciate that. And like Sierra has echoed her support for us in this, likewise, I think sportsmen have put their money where their mouth is. We supported individual producers and other things with monetary things to help them with studies, all the way from getting a multiplier down to the actual cause of death within their lambs and whatever. And it's became a mutual working relationship. So I think it would be a huge mistake to remove the boulders from this. Now I'm partial, like Representative Albrecht, the boulders is very special to me. And where we were thinking, where we'd like to see the sheep, I'd encourage any of you to go down there and see. It's one of the most ideal desert bighorn sheep habitats there is left in the state. And quite frankly, there's probably already desert bighorns there. And that is evident by the rock art that's there. If you go down and see that the Native Americans here, thrived on those sheep, and those sheep existed there. So I would encourage the board, I would beg the board to please leave the boulder on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.
Wade Garrett, Utah Farm Bureau. I'd like to echo some of both what Sierra and Troy said really quick, or Steve, whichever she wants to be today. It was a turning point, and I got to be part of that, and it's been a really great relationship that does work both ways, as Rusty pointed out, and quickly just ditto what those guys said, and thank you for that. We did have some southern producers with some concerns, obviously, as you will hear in their motion. But part of Farm Bureau's policy is that we make sure locals are consulted when new transplants happen. I feel like the plan addresses that well. I'm going to take Kevin, because I've worked with him so closely, at his word that he's going to go down and work, and Director Peck and others. So with the caveat that we make sure we work through that with local producers, I also support this plan, and I'm thankful for all the hard work people have done on that. So it's one of the only committees I haven't sat on for years, so it was nice. So
Thank you, Wade. All right. I would like, if you would, the RAC chairs to summarize your motions from this item.
On this agenda item, the Southern Region made a motion to accept the division's plan as presented, but to remove the Boulder Mountain as a potential reintroduction site, and that motion passed 5-3.
The Central Region made a motion to pass the plan as presented, and that motion passed unanimously.
Northern Region had one motion to accept as presented, and that passed unanimously.
The Northeast region had one motion to pass as presented, and that passed unanimously.
Thank you, Nathan. Scoot?
The Southeast region also unanimously passed a motion to present, or to approve as presented.
Thank you. Thank you. So in all, it passed unanimously in all but the Southern.
Can I just ask real quick on the Southern, did they have comments on the ones that did not pass? The 3 that voted against?
Yeah, the 3 that voted not to support the motion did so based on that this was the very beginning of the process. They felt that that through, a local unit plan, we could, that it was worth at least going to that step and not cutting off the possibility of including the boulder at this point, and give us a chance to work through those issues with the local producers.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
reference to Boulder means Boulder Mountain in Garfield County?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a clarification. So, again, in the Southern Region, you said that they'll have stakeholders together, put a management plan together, and then that will come back to through the public process, right? That plan, through the RACs and the board. If it ever comes up, if it ever does get.
That's correct. Yeah, we would write a unit plan with a local committee, local stakeholders, and a mitigation plan, and that would come back through the public process.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Brian?
Yeah, just a comment. How refreshing to have the stakeholders do this. I was involved in sheep for a lot of years and have been out of it for a little bit. And this didn't always exist. This did not always exist. And I can tell you what a wonderful day that we can have farm bureau, wool growers, conservation groups come together and present this. Thank you, Rusty, for all the hard work that you guys have done. But I just want to make that comment because I remember 15 years ago, this wasn't part of that. And I think this is really good foot forward for our sheep program in Utah. And so thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else?
I have a comment as well. I enjoyed listening to all of the racks and the comments that came up. But what I like to recognize is the division's willingness to take the risk, and to take it upon them, to try these areas that are a little more difficult, and in hopes of increasing the presence of, our desert bighorn. And so I think it's great that they're willing to take that risk, and we're going to try hard things and in hopes that it works. So thank you.
I agree with that as well. And what you said about bighorn sheep habitat, Troy, that's good habitat down there. I like the idea that it's on the list of possibilities. I mean, I think, as you go through the process and all the stakeholders involved and work it through as they do before they introduce anything, and then also bring it back through the public process, I think it's a great idea.
I agree with that as well. And I'd like to commend the division and the committee that they got together and thinking outside the box, and the division's not afraid of taking the risk. And I think being risk averse can oftentimes hamstring us with things that we otherwise might be able to accomplish because we're afraid of a little bit of risk. And I'd like to also echo the comments that have been made that the division's taken the risk. And I like it that we're looking at ways to find more places for sheep or other wildlife even, that we're trying to improve and increase what we have here in Utah and the beauty and the diversity of our state. And also we're not doing it on the backs of producers. I commend that.
Thank you, Kent. Remember, I was on a mountain goat sheep reintroduction plan committee. It's probably been 15 years ago. And I know at that time it was kind of the first inklings of the division, or it seemed like it. And we were very careful. That was right after up in Idaho that they'd shut down some producers because the wild sheep were starting to wander around. And so Utah, I was impressed how careful Utah was about not wanting to do that anywhere near where it could affect a producer. They didn't want that negative impact. They didn't want to. So some of the ranges that are ideal have sheep grazing right next to them in the winter, but those are off the list for that reason. So I appreciate their concern about just the other people in the state and the other things. So I actually like this idea. Any further comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
You have all the fun. All right. I make a motion that we accept the mid-plan review for mountain goat and bighorn sheep, and that we accept as presented.
A motion made by Justin, seconded by Ryan. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye, raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. I like
okay
that.
if I take a second just to,
Yeah.
I mean, Southern, I just want to make it clear, or just a statement. Southern did vote against this, but I did consider all of the factors that came into play, kind of looking at a broader picture, I guess. And so that is why I do support this. I feel like the majority of the stakeholders are in support of this. And so that is why I didn't vote with the Southern RAC this time. but I do appreciate the efforts they put into that.
Thanks, Paula. Yeah, I, at least personally, going through the entire process, I respect their concern, and especially on behalf of the growers, but this is just this, I just saw no reason to exit off the list at this point of possibilities. I thought that would be premature. So anyway, thank you, Paula. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. Okay, we're down to agenda number item, the conservation permit audit, and we have Sarah Scott to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Sarah Scott. I am the financial manager at Division of Wildlife Resources. It's coming up. So I'm going to present the conservation permit audit for 2025. Before I begin, I would like to thank the DWR team that helped me work on this and the staff and volunteers for all of our conservation partners that are great at keeping records and answering my questions as we work through the audit. So a little program overview. This feels like it is way too close to me. Okay. A small percentage of our permits are awarded to our conservation partners, and these permits bring in critical revenue for wildlife and habitat. And our partners also provide not only funding support, but on the ground volunteers for a lot of our projects. So we're grateful for that. I am in charge of the slides. So this is a list of the participating conservation partners for 2025. It's a big list. We have 2 new organizations this year, the Dallas Safari Club Utah chapter and the Utah Chukar and Wildlife Foundation. So the conservation permits this year, 336 permits were awarded, which is less than 2% of our overall permit total. These permits are marketed and auctioned off to maximize the return for wildlife. And this year it generated more than $8.7 million. So the program revenue is used for DWR approved conservation projects. And the breakdown is right here. 30% is returned directly to DWR. 60% is retained by the groups for division approved projects. And then 10% they may keep for administrative costs. What the things we look at in the audit, the 4 major things, is that the project expenditures were approved by DWR, that the funds are kept in a separate federally insured bank account, and that the permit prices that are recorded at the auctions match what's reported by the groups, and that their project revenues are expended within 2 years of being collected. Some of the findings we had this year, 2006 of the permits were selected to be verified, and there were no anomalies found there. We also ran an exceptions report to monitor permit price disparities, and again, no anomalies were found there. A few more findings. There was 100% compliance with the project pre-approval process. One of our new organizations submitted its documents 2 business days late, and they had notified us prior to the deadline that they were going to be late, and that they also needed to establish a separate project bank account. This has since been resolved, and all other funds, the group's funds, were verified in separate and secure bank accounts. A few recommendations for the groups. They need to be mindful of the August 15th deadline for audit documentation and sending their revenue to the division. If the organizations have any permit proceeds that weren't deposited at the time of the audit, they should ensure that those funds have been since deposited. Any accrued interest for these accounts should be left in the account for project expenditures. And if there are bank fees for these accounts that exceed their interest, they need to deposit funds into the account to cover those bank fees. And this is a pile of numbers on this executive summary. These are all the funds that we verify for the audit. The first column is the carryover revenue. Then we add in the new project revenue. We add in any interest and donations, which takes us to the total project revenue. Then we reduce it by the current year project expenditures, which give us the remaining funds, and we verify those with their bank account balances. These project expenditures of over $5 million this year, they went to fund nearly 460 beneficial projects that are on the list. I know that have been given to the board. These funds are being spent transparently and efficiently, and we believe that this is an outstanding program. And that's everything for me. But I won't leave.
One question.
Yes.
You mentioned the deposits and they should bring them up to speed, or do you have any outstanding deposits as of right now?
So we allow the groups to verify them in the next year, but we've never had any issues. We don't ask them to come back to us when they have deposited them, right? We keep the list, and then in the next year's audit, we verify that everything has been deposited. So,
Okay, so it's a flag.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the rack chairs? Okay. We have no public comments on this, so I'll bring it back to the board for discussion or entertaining a motion.
Did I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
You bet.
Sarah mentioned the amount of money that was generated by the conservation permits being 8.7 million, with 10% being able to be retained by the conservation groups for their administrative costs. That's $7.8 million in 1 year that gets to go directly back into wildlife in Utah. And I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Good stuff.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Chris.
It seemed to me that I read that those same tags would have brought in about 56,000. Is that correct? If they'd just been sold through the normal fees collected.
Yes.
Thank you.
We do have one comment card from Troy Justison. Will you please come to the mic?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Troy Justison, Sports Fish and Wildlife. I don't take this for granted. This is a great program. Very grateful for the opportunity to participate in it. And Chris, you bring out an interesting point. You say 56,000. That 56,000 is still collected. They still have to pay the permit fees. The 8 million's in addition. You know, for most of my life, I've been a guide and outfitter, and Nevada has a similar program. So I just want to draw a brief comparison. They have a program that the only way you can apply for the permit is if you book with a guide and outfitter, their guide and outfitter tags. And at the time I looked at this 10 years ago, there's about 400 of them. And so the average Joe, unless he's going to book with a guide and outfitter, cannot put in for those tags. But there's no additional monies raised or anything for wildlife. We come under a lot of criticism for setting aside these tags or whatever, but look what it does for the average Joe. Not only do we support the guide and outfitter program because the majority of these people that buy these tags go with guides and outfitters, but it generated over $8 million. You go and get PR match, which is times 3. It's several hundreds of millions of dollars we're able to invest back in the resource in the state of Utah that benefits the average Joe. And that's one thing I think it's important we recognize too, is this is a sacrifice from the average Joe, the average hunter, because these tags are not available for them. But at the end of the day, I think it's a win-win for everybody. So SFW is very grateful to participate in this program. So and Sarah, the division, you guys are amazing on this audit program. And Angie, Kevin, that handling the paperwork behind the scenes on my team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Troy. All right, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
Thanks. I've been on the ground with some of these projects in the past, and anyway, these projects are some awesome things on the ground for wildlife. And anyway, it's been a good thing. It's been awesome to see the improvement of habitat out there by a lot of these projects that have been funded by a lot of this money. So anyway, it's just been awesome to see.
Thank you, Bob. Anything else from the board?
I was just going to mention that it is true that many of these sell for high amounts of money, and there are some, maybe the elite, that get to use these time and time again. But I want it to be known that also the turkey tags are more in my budget, but I've had a chance to buy one or two of those for my family, and have been grateful for that when we haven't been able to draw. I volunteer a lot of time for a charitable group that takes veterans out hunting, and we also have been able to benefit from these. We've been able to find pronghorn or different tags for reasonable prices that we've been able to take people out, take veterans, and so I think that these tags are accessible to everyone in the public if you keep an eye out and see them. So I think they're based off 2% of the total permit numbers in the state. And I think it's a wonderful way to raise money for our state, and also another opportunity for someone to obtain a hunting permit and to go out and use it. So I think this is a great program.
I agree with you, Justin. I've talked to several other states' wildlife commissioners, and they're quite jealous of the funds that we have, the discretionary funds we have to work with, and it's all because of similar programs to these. And, you know, for those of us that try and put in on the lucky draw at the Expo, it's like having several Christmases in the same year.
I do just want to disclose that I will be recusing from this topic. My background is in conservation organizations, and I'm proud of the work that they do and the work that I've been able to see throughout the years. But for that purpose, I will recuse on this one.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we adopt the I guess we're adopting the permit audit, or accepting the audit of the conservation permit program.
Okay, motion made by Chris to accept the audit as presented. Seconded by Kent. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Good. Motion passes unanimously. All right. We'll now hear about the conservation permit annual report, and that'll be Dax Mangus.
Good morning. Great to be with you. So hopefully everyone had an opportunity to look at the conservation permit report. Happy to go through just a little bit about that report. And Sarah actually hit on a lot of the same highlights. But a little of the history with the conservation permit program started back in the 80s when wildlife managers saw some opportunities to do some things with desert bighorn in southeastern Utah, and funding was just the limiting factor. They implemented this program, kind of the inception of this program, to generate funds, which really enabled a lot of our early desert bighorn sheep and bighorn sheep transplant program that really has set us up to be a state that still has bighorn sheep. They're a tricky species. And so, and the program has just kind of grown and expanded some from there to where we are today, you know, literally bringing in millions of dollars annually that can be multiplied and do a lot of good work for conservation and wildlife. This program is regulated by the Administrative Rule 657-41. And since the inception of the program, has generated over $100 million to be used for wildlife conservation. This graph, let's see, are we advancing? Frozen? Might need help. Technical expertise here. Okay, maybe we're okay. Let's see. It's not displaying as pretty as I hoped it would, but this graph here shows the number of conservation permits we've issued, and it is a lot of permits, but proportionally, it's about 2% of the permits that are available for these hunts. So it's a relatively small percentage of the permits that are available for these hunts that are auctioned as conservation permits to generate this funding, which is used to benefit the species and habitats and do research and transplant work that benefits all those that enjoy wildlife and all hunters. Here's a list of all the different conservation organizations that participate currently in the conservation permit program. Some of these are newer and some of these have been part of the program for a really long time. We had a conservation permit partner summit this just a couple months ago. We went and looked at our bighorn sheep nursery facility up here out in the Box Elder area. And we have a great relationship with the folks in these groups that we work with and really enjoy the flexibility and the things that we can accomplish by working together with our partners in the program. The funds that we raise through this program, you can see it just keeps increasing. And on that previous graph, you saw the number of conservation permits that are issued. The number of conservation permits the last several years has remained relatively steady, but you do see that the funds generated through those permits continues to increase and just lets us do more and more good things for wildlife with that money. Just to highlight some of the accomplishments, this last year we captured almost 2,000 animals. Conservation permit funding is crucial for us being able to accomplish this. 145 bighorn sheep, 54 mountain goats, over 1,100 mule deer, 195 elk, 52 moose, 363 pronghorn. And these are animals that were captured as part of our ongoing monitoring and research projects, given health assessments, many of them fitted with GPS collars. We transplanted a lot of pronghorn this last year. A lot of these animals are just captured and then released in the area where they are as part of our ongoing survival studies and movement and migration studies and health assessments. But in the conservation permit report, we highlighted some of the transplant projects that we did with pronghorn, taking 300 plus pronghorn off the Parker Mountain and supplementing some of our struggling pronghorn populations in other parts of the state, as well as some of the turkey translocations with the Rio Grande turkeys that we flew in from Texas into southern Utah. We also used the funding from the conservation permit program to help with our neonate studies, looking at newborn deer, fawns, and also elk calves on several units. And we're learning a lot and getting some great information that I think is going to help us do a better job addressing limiting factors and doing good things for wildlife moving forward. In fiscal year 25, with conservation permit funds, treated over 36,000 acres of habitat improvement, 62 different projects that benefited these big game species, conservation permit species, including turkeys. A couple examples in there that we talk about some in the conservation permit report, doing crucial mule deer habitat project on that 12-mile project, that Lost Creek collaborative project, and we have a lot of these throughout the states and throughout the state of these big projects that we do accomplish through multiple phases over time.
And a lot of times without the funding from the conservation permit program, we wouldn't be able to do it. You know, working with partners in our federal land management agencies like Bob and others across the state, it's really neat to see what we can do. And because of the stability of this program, that we can count on that funding coming in year after year, we can really tackle some of these longer term, larger projects at a more of a watershed scale, which is really nice. And as was mentioned earlier, when we meet with other states, a lot of times at our WAFWA meetings, that type of thing, this program and what we're able to accomplish with it is really, I think, the envy of most other states. And with that, kind of concludes the summary of that conservation permit annual report. Can answer any questions. So turn the time back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dax. Questions from the board? Questions from the RAC chairs? Okay. There was no online comments for this one, and we have no comment cards, so we'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
I'll just make a comment in just how neat it is and how cool it is to see that, you know, the vision of people 40 years ago, what they were able to accomplish in the first 20 years of the program. There was like 2.8 million or something generated over that first 20-year period. Now we're up to over 8 million in 1 year. And that's because of the foundation those people laid for us to work with and the vision they had. I think it bears, you know, mentioning the work that they laid for us.
I agree. Any other comments or questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the conservation permit annual report as presented.
Motion made by Kent to approve as presented, seconded by
I'll second that.
Bob Christensen. You gonna vote on this one? Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so it's unanimous with one recusal. Thank you. Okay, our next one is a Expo permit audit, and we'll be hearing from Kenny Johnson on that, Administrative Services Section Chief. Go ahead, Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members and RAC chairs. I'm Kenny Johnson, the Admin Services Chief. So we'll switch gears to the Expo audit. I think my favorite part about all of this has become the parts you guys see in the RAC packet, which is that long list of projects that get done through these critical funding mechanisms. And so thanks to Dax and Sarah for covering some of that. And we'll just go through some similar stats here for the Expo and what we saw in 2025. If I can figure out which buttons to push. So really quick background, the Expo rule's been around since 2005. So that's almost predates me even. The first Expo happened in 07. And essentially what happens, we provide 200 limited entry permits to be used for a random draw. And the idea was to have an event that attracted at least 10,000 people to kind of focus on wildlife in Utah for a few days. And obviously with the goal to help fund some of the conservation activities that we do here in the state. So the process is you guys approve the permits annually. They're issued randomly through a contractor that is chosen by our conservation partner. The application permit fee is $5 at the moment. And then we just, to fulfill our part of the rule, we complete an annual review and an audit of the program and the funding. So the current status, and Director Peck hit on this a little bit, the current status, the contract runs through 2026, and that's with Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife and partnering with the Mule Deer Foundation. And then they distribute these permits through the Western Hunting and Conservation Expo. And so we will talk about this year's audit. So per rule, we do a review. We look at these 5 things primarily. You know, the Expo's fun. I love it. I participate, but I'm always worried about the data and all the things in the background of making sure it's successful and it's all protected. And so I think you guys have probably heard me say before that with the army of bots trying to just get into Utah government systems, it's crazy. It's in the billions of attempts a day. And so one of the things that keeps me up at night is just making sure it's secure. And so we are confident with the partnerships that we have that is happening. So the data is taken care of and secure, that the programming used for the draw is random. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Any selected applicants are eligible to actually obtain those permits. We review that. And then we look at the revenue to make sure that it was accounted for appropriately and then spent in the time allotted. So the way this happens, after everybody applies, we usually host the drawing at the division office. We have technical representatives from the Department of Government Operations who just review the code top to bottom. They look at everything and make sure that there's no way to trick us into doing something different. So our team reviews that, and we didn't identify any issues with the code in 2025. One of the things the contractor does is they comply with the payment card industry standards, so PCI standards for data security, credit card security, and they've completed all of their system penetration scans and PCI self-assessment questionnaires prior to taking any applications, and we verify that. And then we just make sure that all appropriate measures are taken to make sure the data is secure. They have very limited access to any data anyway. We didn't have any compliance issues. So these graphs, they started out nice and easy many years ago. They have gotten to be a pile of numbers, as Sarah pointed out. This is one we chopped it a little bit. We started in 2015 to just grab the recent 10 or 11 years of history. And you can just take a minute and kind of look through that. It's applicants, applications, and then broken out by resident and non-resident, and then the gross revenue collected from those. I'll show you a chart of it here on the next slide, and it makes it a little bit easier to see the trends. So applications is that top line, the red number, or the red line. It looks like we, maybe have started to plateau a little bit since the big spike on the COVID year. So the applicants, unique applicants was down just a handful, maybe 6 or 7, I think this year, if I remember right. But the number of applications they were putting in actually increased a little bit. So they were putting in a few more applications per person. And the way the revenue works from that $5 app fee is $1.50 goes directly to division approved projects. So DWR approves those. And $3.50 goes to contractor approved projects for projects in Utah. And so we verify those fund balances, that they're held separately in insured bank accounts. And then we didn't have any issues with that this year. And then the way the project revenue works is they have 2 years from the time they collect it to expend it or transfer it to the division. And there were no issues with any of those items this year. And this is just another table of the carryover, the starting project revenue. And then the new project revenue plus gives us the total, just like we did with the conservation look. Project expenditures during the current year. We'll want to watch that in the next couple for sure. We didn't get as many done this year, but the groups are aware of it and spending those monies appropriately. So, and you can see the list in the rack packet. So the 350, same thing. So the amount is that 1.7. A total of 414,000 approved dollars were used for just overseeing the expo itself, doing the draw and all of those kinds of things, all backed up with receipts, and we verify that. And then the remaining 1.2 after that was split 50-50 for each group, which gives us this 649,000. And here that is in more of a table form. And so you can see the carryover revenue plus the total minus the current project here, the 746, leaves us with this ongoing total of 1.8. But the obligation for spending the revenue was met in both accounts. And then just some other things that maybe we just keep in mind. Applicants did have to validate in person. And then all of our applicants do have to have a valid hunting or combination license to apply in the expo. And that's one of the things the contractor makes sure happens. So in conclusion, all of the things that I worry about were good. We worked really close to make sure they had all of their PCI stuff done and their scans done before accepting any applications. The programming code was fair and reviewed. All of the project revenue requirements were met. Bank accounts, the totals were verified and kept separate in insured accounts. And then again, the most exciting part for me is just seeing the benefits on the ground. So looking at that list of projects that we just add to year after year is the most impressive part for me. And there were no other findings or recommendations.
Thank you, Kenny. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have just a couple if I could.
Go ahead, Chris.
So there were 336 tags that were the conservation permits and 200 that went into this draw. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And are those 200 of similar quality to the ones that were auctioned in limited entry units, or that kind of interchangeable? You could have auctioned them or you could have put them in a drawing.
I'd say they're pretty comparable. Yeah, it's a good representation of all the species from antlerless and turkey and all the way up to a handful of once in a lifetime limited entry.
Justin mentioned that the spike in 2021 was because of COVID, or coming out of COVID, when you didn't have to appear in person. Could you describe the advantages or disadvantages of appearing in person and what that might do to expand the program?
It's a valid question. And so, yeah, the COVID year, we didn't, there was all the crazy 6-foot rules and things that were happening. And so we didn't think it was a great idea to have everybody show up in person. So I think there was virtual everything, vendors and applicants and everything else. And so, yeah, we did see that jump. I don't remember the total off the top of my head, but it was in the thousands of more applicants for sure that year. And I think it's kind of a two-edged sword. We want people here. We want them in Utah. We want them visiting our restaurants and hotels and seeing kind of what Utah has to offer. And so it's kind of trying to find that, that balance.
So the relationship between the expo, do they have to attend the expo to spend the $5 or multiples thereof in order to be applicants?
So they don't have to attend the expo. They just have to validate in person. So before you go into the expo, there's a pretty large booth set up that they'll help you apply. There's no additional payment for that. And then if you want to validate you're good, you can leave, or you can actually go attend the expo.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the rack chairs? I have one public comment card. Troy?
that working? There we go. Troy Justin, Sports, Fish, and Wildlife. Once again, very grateful to be able to participate in this program. And conservation permits are neat. This is way cooler. Why? Because the average guy has the chance to draw those. And coming from an organization that is multi-species, we're not species specific, we're able to take these Expo funds and invest them in upland game, waterfowl, fishing, predator control, whatever, whereas some of the conservation permit funds were restricted because of the guidelines. I would encourage you to go talk to some of the division personnel within the upland game program and also the waterfowl program and ask them how critical these Expo funds are. Once again, I want to thank the division and Kenny and those guys for working with us and helping us through this. My Expo team, Ray's here, Chris is here, and Angie, they have busted their butts to make sure we're in compliance and to generate the most money possible. I think the key thing to remember again here is people still have to pay their license fee. The state gets this. The $5 we receive is no different than what the division gets for a handling fee. You know, it's money that we'd normally be sending to Fallon, Nevada, which is fine, but we're taking that application fee and reinvesting it back here in the state of Utah that benefits Utahns here. So grateful for the news that we're being awarded that again. I think we've worked hard. I think we've earned it, but we do truly appreciate the opportunity to be partners in this expo. So thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Any other comments or questions from the board on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the Expo permit audit.
Motion by Kent to approve the audit as presented,
No, second that.
seconded by Bob. All in favor? Paula recuses herself, so that passed unanimously with one recusal. All right, our next action item is the Expo permit allocation, and will be Dax Mangus, our Assistant Wildlife Section Chief.
Okay, this is pretty simple. We're only recommending one change or two changes, I guess, in the Expo permits for this coming year. We're proposing reducing one limited entry archery elk permit for the Wasatch Mountains unit. And that's just because we've actually decreased limited entry elk permits on the Wasatch unit over the last couple of years, just due to that unit being a little bit below the age objective. And then we're recommending adding one additional any weapon buck pronghorn permit for the Parker Mountain unit, as that population has been recovering and we've been issuing more permits on that unit. So cutting one archery elk tag off the Wasatch just because we've been issuing fewer public through the regular standard public drawing permits for the Wasatch, and adding one buck pronghorn permit on Parker. And other than that, the rest of the Expo permits, we would propose that those stay the same as last year. And that's at 200 permits, and that's the recommendation.
Thank you, Dax. Any questions from the board? Questions from the rack chairs? Okay, I have one comment card. Troy Justinson. You're good. All right, we'll bring it back to the board for your discussion or to entertain a motion.
If there's no discussion, I'll make the motion that we accept the Expo permit allocation as presented.
Motion made by Justin, seconded by Ryan. All in favor? Say aye. Okay. Passes unanimously with one recusal. That's Paula.
Thanks.
All right. We're to Stacy. Our next action item is the rack and board dates, and Stacy Coons, the Wildlife Board Coordinator, will present that to us.
Well, good morning. I'm Stacy Coons. I'm the Wildlife Board Coordinator. I'm here to present the dates for 2026. We kept the dates fairly in line with how you've seen them this year. We didn't have any movements. We're going to continue to hold the board meetings here at this location and continue to live stream them out. The only difference that we've made for next year is you will see that we did not schedule a work session in April as we have done in the past. We would like to modify the way work sessions are used a little bit. The Wildlife Board always has the discretion to add a work session at any time that you feel it is needed. The spring has become a very difficult time for our employees to be able to pull that together with all of the other duties that happen to take place then. So we're asking that you keep it out of that time frame. And we're also suggesting that if a work session is needed, that we might consider tacking it onto the end of a board meeting agenda. Most of your meetings have been wrapping up at noon or sooner on a lot of things. And so we do have that time available if there's conversations. And so for those of you that are new to the board, a work session differs from a board meeting in that there is no action taking during that. It's a time where the board can have open conversations with a division, with members of the RAC, with groups if they choose to. They're still part of the Open Public Meeting Act. So we still place an agenda with them, that we still open them to the public. We would still live stream them, but there are no motions made during a work session. So that is the biggest difference when we talk about a scheduled board meeting and a scheduled work session. So that is it for the dates for next year. There was one small typo in the dates where I put the northern region before the central region in April, and we don't want to do that. We like to see all the errors come out in central first and then move them to the rest. So we'll be swapping that back. Central will be on the Tuesday and northern will stay on the Wednesday. So with that, Chairman, that is the dates for next year.
Thank you, Stacy.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Chris.
Stacy, is there any chance that you could send out calendar invitations for those dates?
Absolutely. Once you approve them today, I will add them to all of your calendars, whether you want them or not.
Including the racks?
Including the racks. You want
Perfect.
all or just the region you're assigned to?
Probably the latter, but if that's not too much work.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the dates for the RAC and board meetings for the coming year.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made by Paula to approve the board and RAC meeting dates for next year and seconded by Kent. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. On the remaining things for the meeting today, Brock, I will personally see to it that that happens for the management plan. We'll either have it a mock one where anybody can plug in numbers and see how it happens and then compare with what's going on in the state, but that'll be made available. So I will follow that through.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else that needs to become before the board? Justin?
I just wanted to make sure that our RACs recognize the appreciation we have for them. I mean, watching through the last two cycles while I've been a member of the board, to see them be able to dissect and really get all the answers or get the questions answered before it gets to us makes for our meetings. They have been going shorter, and I think it's because our RACs have done such a good job of vetting and going through all of the material. So I just like on my behalf, and I hope the entire board to thank all of those RAC members and the time they put in to help this meeting go smoother, because they did go through so much of the information that we didn't need to discuss or ask because they had done so already. So I just wanted to thank them for that.
I'll agree with that. We do appreciate your efforts. It's been interesting to watch that process evolve. I remember a long time ago when I was on the RAC and some of the RAC members would be opening up their packet as they sat down at the table. in the Springville Museum or whatever, that junior high, I think it was. And now they're coming prepared. They have their questions in mind. They're familiar with the numbers and the data, and it's expedited the process dramatically. It's also made them able to make a good productive difference rather than just not. So I appreciate your efforts. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank the indulgence of the group for my ignorance on a lot of these topics. I'm learning a lot, and things that I knew peripherally, now I'm able to more fully understand. I'm very impressed with all the work that goes into to do the work of the division. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. to adjourn.
Motion made by
Second.
Justin,
Second.
seconded by Kent. Meeting is adjourned.